Yeah. Or I'll be talking like, yeah, it's a great point. And then I just dart to the left. All right. The Sonic City Council is now in session. Thank you so much for inviting us into your headphones, your car, your home, your mind. As always, I'm Jesse Davidson, and I am joined across the interwebs by Davey Sipes.
Cuckoo to you, young squire.
All right, and as always, do we have a gavel? I think we have a gavel.
Somebody slap a chicken. Let's start this show. There we go. Intro.
Intro. That's what this is. That's the intro. Hello, Davey. How are you doing today?
Oh, Jesse, I'm contemplating the abyss today.
Ooh, interesting.
And I find it picturesque and glorious in the cascading darkness within.
Wow.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
That's the equivalent to when someone just responds to your text and just puts a capital K. Like, how was your
right?
day?
It's like,
yeah,
that's good. Or just like the thumbs up. Like if I just texted all that to you, and you're just like, for sure.
hey, it'd be like that sometimes, though.
Don't it be like that though?
Yeah, it's like,
don't it just be abyss though?
Or oof.
Ain't nothing but abyss. I still got it.
Yeah, you still got it.
I still have that.
You still do, sir.
I still have that infection. It lingers.
Do you?
Well, no, I think I'm COVID free now, but I mean, like the soul fungus that I've been battling since adolescence. The soul fungus is the mold is spread everywhere. It's from bow to stern, if you follow my nautical expression.
Well, I mean, me being the Parliament fan and bringing it up like I always do, you love parliamentary procedure. I do, and I love.
You're a nut for it.
Yeah, I am, and and I love funkadelic exploration. I think it was on Uncle Jam Wants You to Funk with Him, the album that had Knee Deep on it. They talk about writing music to eliminate the blahs, or they made that album to eliminate the blahs in dance music. But that's really, we're talking about eliminating the blahs in life, maybe.
I mean, perhaps.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly when you're referencing the glorious auditory army of Parliament / Funkadelic, I think that's a fair statement to make. There's one that's just like, I don't know, it's not even about Parliament, but we're gonna go there real quick because I'm like, frankly, there's just one of those bands where it's like everybody's got to have one of those songs where they literally like Parliament helps you set it off. Because while you were talking, yeah. I was like, I don't know that song, but I started thinking about Flashlight, and I'm just like, I used to put that on to celebrate like whatever I thought was a victory in my very tiny carbon-based existence. Flashlight would be like, gotta cue that shit up, homie.
Yeah.
That was like, I had a very small playlist on the first iPod, remember back in the day, and it was literally like second song in because the first one's got to be Soundgarden, but the second one's totally Parliament.
Right on. Yeah.
And that's that.
Their key songs have some like crazy radical life lessons in them. Like that's Flashlight's one of them. If you dig into the lyrics of that, or One Nation Under a Groove is another one. But
I heard that they were getting down just for the funk of it, and I'm just like, that's so inspired.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah.
My wayward sons.
Well, now we're getting.
There'll be peace when you're done.
Well, now we're getting into a whole other state, whole other jurisdiction. All right.
I know, right? Let's stop right there at the border. Done.
Yeah,
Done.
We're gonna stay in sort of the Oklahoma area, not going into Kansas.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to sing Oklahoma.
Oh, dude.
Some references, I won't just hit the gas pedal.
Sometimes you don't take the bait when I leave it out there.
Hey, man, I grew up on musical theater. I was like, enough's enough. That's like asking me to sing Sweet Home Alabama on the podcast. I'd be like, are you paying me right now for that? No money exchanged hands yet.
Well, Freebird is $100, of course, but we won't get into that.
Freebird is $100. Sweet Home Alabama is $101 on my band. And let me tell you, my bands get angry about that. Because I'll be like, well, play without me. No one's gonna notice the bass player not playing. Like, even though it's a pretty tight little bass line, it's not a signature bass line. It's not like if you walked off of like a song that Flea wrote. It's not.
Yeah, but
You know.
yeah, I
And have you
guess.
ever done that? Have you ever just been like, I'm just gonna take 5 while you assholes play? Like, that's the one thing I gotta say is like, I do love being a bass player because I've gotten away with it. I mean, I've done it. It's not professional, but I've done it.
No, I've never done it.
I mean, let me tell you, my version of professional is whatever I decide to do that day. So I can tell you that I've definitely like taken a 5 and come back during a set. I've done that.
I mean, I have songs.
People have called me back.
Hey, more power to you.
I mean, they don't give me as a reference for sure. But I get that.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. No, I have those songs
Sorry.
where there's the break. There's the break, at the beginning or in the middle where there's like a non-bass section. There's a few of those kind of tunes, or you don't come in until like the chorus or something like that. So,
What's your favorite one of those? Do you have like a favorite one though? Because I
um,
could tell you mine, but you go first.
I can't think of them at the moment, but it's yeah, I don't know. Rumor has it from Adele was a good one. Because like the whole first part of that song is just drums and vocal, and then you can add in little embellishments. But if you're following it like the record, I think if I'm remembering that right, that was always a good one to, you know, grab some water, make fun of the drummer, you know, something like that.
Grab some water, make fun of the drummer.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
yeah, like try to make the drummer laugh, and in the middle of the gig,
Give the drummer some BS. That's it.
give the drummer some. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um.
So what else, Jesse?
Well, what else is today? We are joined by a phenomenal songwriter, world traveler, poet, artist. I mean, you could throw out the term Renaissance man if you wanted to about so many other people because they do multiple things. This is a case of truly someone who is a Renaissance man, and that is the great Ian McCartor on the podcast today.
Ian McCartor.
Yes. If he doesn't use that as his own personal theme song after this, I don't know what he's doing with his life.
In like 5 years when we all have little digital business cards, that's got to be on his thing.
Absolutely. It's like,
I give it to him for free because I think he's that cool.
yeah. He's for people that don't know who Ian is, he is a songwriter who also works as a hospice nurse. And in just kind of summing up what he does before we get into the conversation, he takes these patients or other people who commission him to write songs for them. Well, basically, he's tasked with writing songs that sort of encapsulate what this person's essence of their life was and sort of their life story in lyrics and in a song. And he'll interview these people and take themes of their life and sort of find a central idea to base the song off of and just go for it and craft a whole piece of music around this person's spirit and their essence. And he's been doing this for about 5 years now, and this has sort of grown into this big thing where he's, going to the VA in San Diego, and he's going to, basically traveling around SoCal under, non-COVID conditions and sort of, capturing these people's story. And it's a really beautiful thing that he's doing.
Yep. It's an excellent description, I think, of what he does, and it's one of those things that I find hard to put into words exactly like how meaningful and how dutiful and how cool of an idea it is and what he's doing.
Yeah, and an original idea too. I've never heard of this being done before him, and I'm glad that somebody's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like I've maybe certain conceptual things that maybe come close, but not to the level he's taken it.
Yeah.
I mean, in my experience either, definitely not.
Yeah. So, without further ado, let's get into the conversation.
Bebop-a-dab-a-dab-a-doo-doo-dab.
Ian, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to it as well. And it's oddly enough, you were one of the last people that I got to hang out with in person right before the world sort of shut down. So, which was
Wow.
a lovely, great conversation that I was happy to be a part of, and I'm glad to be talking to you again via Zoom over this podcast.
Almost on the other side.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I hope so.
You optimist, man! Oh,
I
man.
know.
You
I
guys
can't help
make me
myself.
giggle. Holy shit!
Well,
I was like, you didn't hear about the new edition they're rolling out just in time, like along
Yeah.
with the new Tesla. We're getting a new COVID for 2021.
Just it's a gift from Santa.
Yeah, which is an anagram.
see,
I want to hear the details of you guys hanging out pre-pandemic. I want names and dates and times.
well, it
It was
hit.
at the Kinetic, I think, right?
Yeah, it was
Nice.
in Kinetic, and it was early March, I believe. And
The
then
Ides
I
of
was
March.
yes, yes, exactly. And
Pride Tides.
yes, and we were both basically just talking about sort of music and art and creativity, and like it was really great because I got to get your perspective on just where you were coming from with all that, beyond just getting to see you sing a song on Facebook or getting to see your sort of perspective on life, just as represented in your work. So
Right.
something I wanted to talk about with that was just basically how has your creativity sort of evolved and changed during all of this time that we're living in right now? Where you were at, say, in March, sort of pre all this, and then now, and pretty much in a new year.
Well, I think it's definitely had to mature. It's definitely been thrust into a higher expectation. Just in general, I've had to do more of the legacy songs
Yeah,
as this year's gone on, and it's just kind of fascinating as music and life slowed down in other ways, like the opportunities to create these songs for these people just magnified by tenfold. And so again and again, just like witnessing those perspectives has changed me since March for sure, and
yeah,
matured the work in a deeper way for sure.
yeah. When you say mature, just dealing with heavier subject matter, or just kind of your own perspective on life is thrown in there as well.
I'd say both. It kind of has to go hand in hand for me. Just like when you deal with that kind of immersion, it rubs off in your personal philosophy every time in some way. But I think, to be more specific, it's matured with dealing with the subject matter, but then like it's cultivated more depth. It's like I've been exposed to similar themes, but from like a more varied perspective from all these different kinds of people. So it's deepened sensitivity for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we unpack this in greater detail? What
Oh,
we're talking about here vis-a-vis legacy songs, just so
Yeah,
because
we
what you do is super unique. And I don't know of anything else out there like it, honestly, like what you do, Ian. So I don't know if I want to maybe kind of dig into that a little bit. What do you think?
Whatever you'd like. I don't know if you're going to do a little intro before the episode, but I could explain it
No
better.
intros. No, we've
Okay.
done away with intros. No, we might. But I don't know. I was just curious. Jesse, did you have more on that, or am I jumping the shark here, or what's up?
No, I'd love to talk about that more in greater detail. But yeah, like it's something that I think before we go on, people who may not have heard of your work. I mean, people in our area where we live, have heard of you and have seen you play and things like that. But people who listen to this, outside of our community won't necessarily know. So, and I know that we've talked about this, when I've interviewed you for my column in the AV Press out here before, but just talking about it on the podcast, if you want to give kind of a brief introduction about how all of that started and just, what the legacy songs are and, your relation to that. That'd be awesome.
Totally. Yeah, so for people who haven't heard of what a legacy song is, it's essentially something that I adapted from combining my experience in the world of being a hospice nurse and the other side of being a singer-songwriter. And um, again and again, I was just in these circumstances where, the end was near and there was so much that wanted to be left behind and just so little time.
Right.
And so over time, over the past several years, I've developed this program where I I go into the bedside and I sit with somebody who only has a little bit left to go, and we go through this comprehensive interview, and I record it, and we discuss life's purpose, looking back on life itself from the end and what that looks like now, and essentially a way that they can still feel like they can give back and they can still contribute something very wise and very just penetrating in a way that it's very rare to find in normal living. It's that wisdom that we learn too late so many times. And then through that, I take a general theme from that interview, and in the songwriting world, we call it a North Star. And it's that direction that focuses in on what that song has to say. And then, in essence, that song becomes part of them. And the idea is to share it with them and their family before they pass on, so that they can know that this will live and this will go on to affect many others. And then on the
Right.
other side of it, I add it to a repertoire of legacy songs that I record and share globally and perform live for my concerts and just tell their stories again and again. And, that way they know that they live in a capacity that without the song, it wouldn't exist, or it wouldn't remain in the same way.
Right.
Just kind of creating something that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And it's evolved actually this year from just singular hospice patients to more, in these times, more like bereavement support and like healing songs that, people that have lost or that are separated from the ones they love, they can express their love about these people, and then the songs are created as offerings for those people. Um, and then also, we had a recent song that was commissioned for somebody that was alive and well, and the whole philosophy from her was just like, I've learned from your songs that you shouldn't wait to love. You shouldn't wait until the end to do this. And so she's like, I want to do it now. And she did
Yeah.
it for her husband as a gift for Christmas. And I just thought that was so powerful. And it felt good because it's like, good, they're getting it. Like that theme of like, don't wait until the end to learn,
Right.
give love while you have time. And may the realization that time is brief, and potentially for any of us, it's, nothing's guaranteed. The idea is like, imagine that fragility in a way that causes you to act and causes you to do what maybe you would have regretted not doing
Yeah.
had the time passed.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's really a whole beautiful philosophy that comes along with that, and having that
Mm-hmm.
perspective. And also, too, this is something I've been guilty of, like having my own experience with dealing with family and going through that situation, just, with family members passing and things like that.
Right.
It's, I remember when that happened to me, I had this thing of like, I needed to kind of bolt through life, in the sense of like, not wanting to speed through it, but I felt like I had to do all the things at once that like I hadn't done yet. And so like, and this was in the middle of college, so that was me starting to write more, starting to, play in different groups, wanting to just get out and do all these different things. And for you, I was wondering, how is how has that affected your workflow, and like with writing and all that? Because you're writing on a deadline and you're writing on a time. And I don't know, just I guess without getting like too broad all at once, I think that, you know, where's the balance for you with trying to get all of the things done that you need to get done with writing, and making sure you're spending the proper time with each of person that commissions these songs, versus your own ambitions, versus taking care of your own social relations. Like, I guess doing this kind of stuff really makes you think about your time and how you manage it and use it effectively.
Yeah, it. I've definitely become more aware of how precious it is, and how really quickly it goes by.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm a big advocate of consistent discipline, and just simplicity, and really being purposeful and paring down all the things that waste you in life.
Right.
All the things that aren't fulfilling that parallel with that deeper purpose that you feel called to do. And with me through this music, it's been really a blessing to kind of attach it to my artistic work. Like the visual art that I do is very much aligned with this and in a similar theme. And just in my life in general, like all these themes and songs and everything kind of ties together. And so it feels like it's gotten to a point where everything's in harmony, and
Right.
and how it's all just kind of a way of life. And waking up in the morning and having my coffee and doing my journaling and just getting to the work that needs to be done that day, and
Right.
go to sleep and do it again. It's
Yeah.
I love it. And this year has changed a lot of my life flow in a way to where um, I used to be quite a traveler, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah.
And I'd just be everywhere all the time, all around the world. And you know this year uh, disguised a blessing in that restriction, to where it's like I've been able to deepen, and instead of expanse, it's been more diving in. And it's just come down to that simple daily routine of the craftsman, and just doing the work just like you're a blacksmith or something. You just hammer that metal every day, and this progress happens. And it's
Yeah.
harder to do when I was on the move so much. I feel like I always wanted to, but there was just so much at the time. Just looking back on the story, just so much I had to learn, and so much from that led me here. I wouldn't have known necessarily without the contrast.
Right.
To have tasted the wide, and now I taste the deep, and it's like, oh, this is great. I could. And it happened at an interesting time. Like, COVID began shortly after I turned 30, and 30 was a very like ceremonial year at the retreat at the castle in France. And it was all about new beginnings and like a new chapter and a new season. And little did I know how incredibly true that was to become. It's just like I
Yeah.
had a feeling, but it just completely, my life shifted in a huge way, but
Yeah.
a beautiful way.
Oh yeah, no, and I think there is like that sort of intuition and whatever you want to call it. There's that thing you could tap into that's like however you make decisions or whatever is going to guide you, and it comes from
Mm-hmm.
different places, but you can tap into that.
Yeah.
And two things relating to that for me. One was that I had stumbled on some old journal entries I had from February, and I was writing it in relation to other things, but I had said in there that I'm about to embark on like the biggest personal sacrifice I'm ever going to make or something like that. And that was just something that I was feeling. And little did I know that meant like everything just, stopping.
So cool.
Yeah, and I don't know why I wrote it at the time. It was about something a lot more superficial than what it was. It was about me just like basically trying to develop what you're talking about, like really honing in on like what I want to do and kind of like trimming the fat on a lot of things and just
Sure.
narrowing down my focus. And so that was just something that popped into my head and I wrote it down. And but yeah, I think it's interesting how it's like, you can tap into that kind of thing and, almost like, kind of feel where your life is going to end up in a certain sense, or at least kind of navigate through it if it throws you a curveball.
Right. And this was the curveball of all curveballs for
Yeah.
for most of us.
Yeah, it was a fastball thrown by the universe, and it was a comet that just smacked into the side of what we were doing.
No kidding. It's
Yeah,
a good
but
analogy.
yeah, I mean, I don't. It's interesting for sure, but I don't know. There's so much I want to like unpack with like the traveling and more about the songwriting. And
Hmm.
I don't know, Davey, I want to pass it over to you real quick if you had any other questions that were coming to you.
When did you start playing instruments? Like, how old were you?
Instruments?
Yeah.
Um, I really started loving instrumental music when I was a teenager. I was like in my mid-teens, and I picked up fiddle, bluegrass, and then started singing around the same time. And hard to sing with the fiddle under your neck,
Yeah.
at least for me. So I'd moved to mandolin, but then that moved to guitar, and then songwriting began when I was like 20, and that's when I just fell in love with songwriting, and it just felt so natural in so many ways, and kind of the whole traveling and everything was a part of like exploring why songwriting came in, and just like, what am I here to say? Like there's that the saying, everyone, there's so much talent and there's so many people who are really good at what they do, but like, what are you saying with that? And so for the longest time I was just like, man, like what's the point? Like, is it just about me on my little adventures around the world and singing my songs about romance and stuff, or is there something else? And I always felt that there was, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's influenced it. I think that the traveling and having the diversity of culture and the human way exposed to me was really powerful, and applying it to working in end of life and extracting poetic components from people's stories in that way, because it's like it's shown me in so many ways how we're all so alike. And I've seen that in my global travels and at the bedside of the end. And it's just like these arcs of purpose and desire and triumph and failure and just all these things, just they're so common to everybody. And we
Hmm.
hear it, but I was able to really get a nice personal front row seat given the two combined.
Yeah.
When did you first start doing the end of life hospice and palliative care as a career? You've been doing it for a while now, right?
Yeah, years now. It was really interesting just how I began in medical nursing, and I started in like cardiology and progressive care and ICU and stuff. And it was my first official job ever. Actually, I was always just like freelance artist before that, and so I was just like thrust into this insanely uncomfortable job
Yeah.
that was just so overwhelming in so many ways. And like to really experience human suffering in a way that I never ever imagined. Just seeing the worst of the worst. It's out here at Antelope Valley Hospital, and this place it's a rough joint.
No shit.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
really rough.
Yeah. They
And
should close
so
that place. Ah, man, they,
it's
they did a great job killing my mom. I'll tell you that much.
oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just lots and lots and lots of tough stuff. And
Yeah.
so in general, I was just kind of like, my gosh, like this is such a challenge, and I was like wanting to write my songs and wanting to do this, and like it really ended up being a great teacher, and in a way to where in general in medical environments it was very much like, please fix me and don't talk to me about any potential of me ending.
Mm.
Just fix me and off I go. And so I saw this repeated like denial of potential in a way to where it's just like there these huge life shifting circumstances that would happen to these people. And I saw how some could choose to accept it and reflect upon it to be like, wow, I am so fragile and I need to rethink how I'm living, or like I need to or and there were some people that were just like, oh my gosh, like this opened my eyes to so many things. But most of the time I saw people that were just like, don't want to talk about it. I just want to get out of here and get back to my normal life, and I want it all to be better again.
Right.
and they couldn't accept a change. It was always like this resistance. And so part of me was just like, gosh, I just feel like there's something deeper underneath the surface here that the medical environment wasn't showing me as consistently as I wanted.
Mm.
And so over time, I ended up leaving medical nursing because I found hospice nursing while being in the medical environment. I had an accidental run in while I was doing cardiology, and they were just like, hey, on your run today, like, is it okay if we give you a hospice patient? And I'm like, wow, okay. Like, I've never had a hospice patient before. Like, what do we do? You know, and it just was such a like unexplored field because I was used to like, cure this guy. But when I was in that room, I remember there was the patient and the mother, or it was the daughter of the patient and the nurse that was in there. And there was this honesty there that was just so profound and just like this total acceptance of what was happening. And it just rang a bell, like loud and clear for me. And I'm like, here is where the stories lie. Like, here's the truth. And I went in and talked to the nurses separately in their little case management office. And I just had this idea. I'm like, gosh, like, do you guys learn from these people in a way that you don't learn from other circumstances? And they both were like, all the nurses were just like, yeah, like, these people are our greatest teachers. I mean, to witness that is like as real as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, huh, okay, I like that. I'm like, is there anybody like documenting and creating pieces out of these stories, like songs? It just made sense to me. And like memorializing these stories and these things that we all can learn from. And, before they're gone forever, like they're alive, you don't listen, and then they're dead, and that story's gone. And I'm like, is there anybody like intentionally trying to like create something new from something that's passing away? And they're like, no, like we've never heard of that. Like, are you gonna do that? And I was like, yeah, yeah, that sounds like exactly what I'm gonna do. And so that was like 5 years ago. And so since then, just developing this practice in a way to where it's like an artistry, but also there's a sensitivity that's required, almost like you have to be part therapist, part musician, or
Yeah.
part poet at least. And it's taken a lot of patience, because it's not for everybody, and to explore how to offer it in the most sensitive way has really been the key, the most respectful way. And in this past year, it's been unlike any other year. Just, I think it's been growing for all this time, and it's needed now. I think it really is.
Yeah. It takes somebody who has that, um, well, just that perspective and that worldview that you have, and just, and even beyond that, the empathy and patience that you already had going into it. And then it's a chance for you to hone and develop that even further, listening to
Right.
people's stories.
Yeah, it's a real benefit from the artist perspective. I mean, I almost feel guilty sometimes, like that I get to do this because I learn so much, and like the challenge of having to listen to somebody like this and to really stand in their shoes and like get something relatable from it, and then
Mm-hmm.
crafting a song as best and as quickly as possible. Like, just from a craftsman perspective, like I've never had anything so interesting to do. And I think there's tremendous benefit to doing this from anybody's point of view. Like, I've had other artists that have been interested in kind of joining a little team that I'm putting together, because it's getting to the point where the commissions are you know getting numerous, and I'm only one man. And
Right.
so to find other artists with that same curiosity and that same willingness to be sensitive and willingness to serve with their work. You know, it really connects you to a different degree of the muse, as I like to put it. Like there's this kind of mysterious quality to it. Like I was working on two today that I'm doing at the same time for two similar subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about when you're like, as the artist calling upon creativity, you know, and that mysterious source that's talked about by so many.
Right.
Um, when it's for another person, for the sake of healing and for the sake of serving them, there's something different about that. It's hard to put into words, but it's like there's a different clarity. Um, I guess you could say, like the ego kind of gets the heck out of the picture for a little while, and it's just like this purity comes through, and it's unlike anything I've experienced in any other form of creative connection. You know, like I've written tons of songs about tons of other things with tons of other people, but like when it's connected to somebody as like you're the vessel for them to like help them and help others, it's like this really kind of mysterious feeling that comes through. And these songs just are like, here you go. And like these songs are just like put right on your lap, and you
Wow.
just listen. And like some of these songs come out in like 10 minutes, and they're just like transcribing pretty much. And it's really special. And so, I mean, just I'm excited for other artists to feel that too, because it almost feels like holy ground or something. You know, it's like you're this
Mm-hmm.
servant in a creative capacity that just can do so much good. And it's like something knows that and allows you to be that if you want to be it. And I think I think everyone should should try it because it's really amazing.
Yeah. Well, and this was a big theme of the conversation we had in March, was talking
Mm-hmm.
about service and doing the work that you need to do.
Right.
And and there's a bunch of different ways to quantify that creative field, I feel like, because I brought it up on the podcast before. There's I think Tom Waits calls it fishing. So you're just basically
It's a
waiting.
perfect way to
Yeah,
say it. Yeah.
yeah, waiting to catch the ideas. And then I think Keith Richards equated it to basically like a radio antenna, and you're just waiting to receive the ideas. I think Brian Wilson said something similar.
Mm-hmm.
With, he's not writing the songs. Songs are, happening through him basically. And I think that's a
Right.
good way to. I mean, for me, I think it's a good way to put it. I think it works because I'm at the point now with my work and anything I do creatively, whether it's writing pieces on my own or writing music with my band or anything. It's about what can you do to really service those things. And I've always had that perspective about it needs to serve the song, but on a
Mm-hmm.
deeper level than that, it's about really, I think for me, removing myself from the equation at all and just like kind of throwing yourself into whatever the work is. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, as far as the writing perspective, like, I don't know, how is that for you as far as uh, well, you're describing it in pretty good detail, but I think that would be a good way to put it, right? You're basically just, especially when you're commissioning, these songs are commissioned by other people, you're kind of really, removing yourself from the equation as much as possible.
Right. I think there's a balance there because I found it's most heartfelt when I'm witnessing somebody and I find something that's very them, like something that's really true to who they are. And I usually find that that occurs when I like identify with it in a way. It's like almost like this universally human thing that comes out so clearly in somebody. And it usually takes the form of a story or a lesson learned or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, the pinnacle of what their human experience has been. Or if it's like, if I'm interviewing a family member doing a legacy song about somebody that they've loved and who's been lost, it's like the pinnacle thing that they were in them or they have become in them. And then that kind of carries on to me. And as an artist, like that springs something in me. And I can bring myself to it in a way to where it's like I'm not trying to force it, but it's like transforming in me, and then it becomes both of us in a way.
Yeah.
And it's been great too because it's helped me say things and see things that I don't think I would have seen otherwise. It's like they've shown me, uh,
Right.
all these different perspectives, but the whole self is in the sense of like, what am I, what are people going to think about this song, or like, is it
Right.
good, or like, all the ego stuff that comes
Yeah.
in.
Right.
That's the you that needs to go.
Yeah.
You need to bring the best of you as the artist to them, and then none of that uh, distraction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just have to be clear. It's just a matter of love and clarity when you're crafting something for these purposes.
Yeah, and it is. It absolutely is a distraction. I mean, even if you were just writing a song to put it out in the world for yourself, or we're just writing an album, or I just want to, write this type of song, that
Hmm.
happens anyway, and especially if there's such a weighty attachment to what these songs are about, and even if it's coming from a good place out of, say, a pressure of wanting to do well, it still
Hmm.
is a distraction because ultimately the song is going to happen. And if you're just doing the best you can and shaping it as an artist, you have to kind of trust where you're coming from on that and trust your process. And
Totally, that's big. Yeah, whenever there's elements of that self that's coming in, that's destroying the song, I just trust the process, and I'm just like, okay, and I pray again, and I get back to work, and I just keep digging and listening at the same time. It's like you're digging in the dark and you're looking around for diamonds as you're going through.
yeah.
It's like there's the tunnel, and yeah, it's having a routine, like a system, a personal reset almost, because
Yeah.
we know how it goes. You guys, all writers and expressors, they know the bite of that, of the doubt, and the just the selfishness that can distract from the beauty of something that can be so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's there's a lot that's been learned.
yeah. And it seems like looking at, your whole body of work, whether it's, and just, this is something I've been thinking about too, with, everything's kind of connected, was the epiphany that I had, not that long ago, where all the different aspects of what I do and my personal life outside of my creative work and ambitions, they're all connected to each other. So if like you're really out of whack in, a couple different areas, then it's going to affect everything else.
Hmm.
And like, say if you're if you're I'm trying to think of a good example. So like let's say you're writing and you're trying to get, either more output, like you feel like the ideas aren't coming or you're not able to like, channel anything, or
Hmm.
if you're writing a piece of music and you're not feeling as inspired as you are, but, your head's not as clear as it usually is. So maybe like, you've been meditating and then you've stopped meditating for whatever that reason is, or you have more on your mind this week than you did the previous week or previous month. It's,
Hmm.
to me, that will affect all the other work that you're trying to do if you can't shake that.
Right.
So, and for you talking about your life, it's like when all of these things are in harmony, then you're like the best at all of these different aspects of your life. So I don't know. Do you think that as far as the way you've lived your life with, how everything's come together, do you feel that this has all been like kind of a goal that you've always had, or is this stuff that's just come into your path and you've just kind of gone with it? Have you always wanted to live sort of a storied life? Because if you look at, the traveling you've done, the experiences you've gotten to have, and being able to put all of these things, I mean, it's a gift to be able to put all these things into song and express yourself through a medium, because so many people don't have a form of expression and they seek that.
Right.
So I don't know. Do you think is that something that was always a goal for you, or is this something that overall has just come into play and you've just gone with it?
It's a good question. I actually was thinking about that the other day and just like looking back to the earliest days and how my fascination began with story. And it was always more geared towards animation or like story writing as a kid. And I do these comics and like storyboards for these characters and these worlds and stuff that, I just had such an imagination of what life could be. And there was one day that I was writing about this character that was off on some like riverboat at night or something,
Yeah.
and there was part of me that was just like this little voice in my head that was just like, you've been writing as if you'll never do any of these things, but you will go and you will be alive with your story. And I remember being a kid and just thinking like, whoa man, like where did that come from? I was kind of stunned. But then since those days, like I was always kind of sniffing for that path, I guess you could say. Like I've kind of gone with the flow on one hand and just really like, let's see what happens next. But there's
Yeah.
always been kind of this inherent sensibility that's kind of attracted towards the next step of how everything can connect and like how occurrences of the past can then become context in the future, and just how, like you said, how the story is all connected.
Yeah.
And I think an important thing to do is like not to lose track of your story. I think everybody can keep track of their pathway and reflect on how all those things can inform the present you that will then adjust the future you, and how that story I think could be accepted more in different ways maybe. Like if I denied my past, I can see how I wouldn't be as, how to put it, I wouldn't be as aware of certain opportunities perhaps.
Right.
Like I wouldn't be like that path wouldn't be as clarified. I'd
Hmm.
kind of just be wandering aimlessly or something. But I think I've always been story oriented, and how I've always been like craving that depth. It's just like that little intuition that's just like, there's something else.
Right.
There's something more. Just keep going. It's just like that little conscience. And and I really feel like all through those 20s, like my past decade, was just so much adventure and just in these magical opportunities that I never could have imagined. And even like, I tell these stories to my girl all the time, and we have little adventure nights, and I'm just going back over these stories, and I'm just like, my gosh, like what a charmed life. I had so much incredible experiences in such a short time, like within 5 years, really, like from the time 25 to 30, like I feel like I've lived three lives over.
Right.
And then on the other hand, like it's like in between there was the medical work and dealing with exploring that adventure within, and how these people have all these accumulated stories and adventures ending in that scene that you're witnessing. And so it was like this interesting contrast of like being in the midst of my own adventure outward and also inward, but then seeing these people like at the end of theirs. And
Yeah.
that was just really an interesting contrast. Just helps you evaluate that pathway differently, when you see the culmination of a lifetime of decisions. you know Sometimes people die very content and curious and almost excited in some ways, and then some
Right.
people are just resisting to the bitter end. And I think one of the most lovely lessons that I've learned from people who are so curious in the end, or like, you know, very engaged and like accepting of what may come, is you know, it's not something that just happens. You know, they're like, we've lived this way. Like, life's an adventure, and it's the next step is always a mystery, and tomorrow is, you know, who knows what tomorrow is going to be. And these people that have embraced that mystery and have embraced change with grace, you know, I find that those are the people who at the end are no different. You know, they're just like, it's just another step, and I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I want to be that guy, you know.
Yeah.
Like, to have that kind of fortitude and like that kind of grounded courage, you know, I think that's something you can practice while you're alive,
Yeah.
according to these people.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a lot of facing the unknown, which you deal
Yeah.
with throughout life, and I think the prep for that
Right.
is just how you handle the unknown while you're here, really. Because I
Yeah.
mean, it's the same with if you're presented that opportunity for nursing, and then when hospice nursing came up, like those things, if you were a different person, you might have been afraid to like take the plunge for either of those things because of just what you were already used to. It's like, no, I'm a cosmopolite, and I travel around, and I'm the worldly artist guy. I don't have a regular job. That's not why I'm here. But you were flexible enough to go like, no, I want to do this. Something about it, drew you to that. And obviously it's what you were meant to be doing because of what this has turned into with these songs. And I think it's about recognizing those things and not getting bogged down in, necessarily worrying or planning for your future, but just kind of going with what's right, and what
Right.
feels right, or what's the right, direction to be following. And that can be hard to tune into at first.
Yeah, and I think it's a practice, just like anything. Like, you just have to practice that kind of sensitivity. Is that Pizza Hut?
You beat me to it.
How do you mute this?
Call from Joe.
Domino's.
There you go.
That was a Jeff Collier line that I've stolen from him.
Oh, Jeff, man, I haven't seen him in years.
I know. I mean, the last I saw him was before he moved to Nashville, and in like beginning of this year, but
So
still
Jeff's
feels.
in Nashville. Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, just outside of Nashville, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
he's moved out there with his wife. So
Oh, cool. Well, I'll have to drop him a line next time I'm out there.
yeah.
Yo,
No,
but
me.
there was a point I was gonna make as far
Yes.
as letting that, like, those conflicts in life inform you. I think there was this really great analogy that I heard from a recent um, client through the songs. He's 100 years old,
Wow.
Hall of Famer from the Air Force, and just like famous in the Air Force community of just being this like gutsy fighter pilot, test pilot, like legend, record setter kind of guy. And he told me this, or told my liaison that then I wrote the song about, a really beautiful analogy in regards to what you were just saying, of how when we're in this adventure of life, you know, it's essentially like we're flying, and you know, there's the winds of change that come, and they can throw you a loop and batter your plane around. And it's when you fight it and resist it and like press the stick as hard as you can, and try to make it something that you want it to be, or like the direction that you want to go, and that's it. You know, he argued that that resistance is what can send you right to the ground. But he said he found the best thing is to release just enough to where you can listen to the conflict, and when that change comes, you're not so quick to fight it, to where you can let it lift you and like take you to heights that you never imagined. And looking back, like along that little life story, you know, it was those conflicts that would tend to come from like what I imagined would be the answer, you know, like the complacency or like the comfortable move or whatever, or like, you know, the promise of success that, you know, that we
Right.
all hope for. And then like this wind would kick up in me and I'd just be like, oh my gosh, like this isn't it. This isn't the right choice. And I would always try to be open to just let it take me into this next chapter. And usually these chapters would just be a complete new step, like moving to a place where I just felt compelled to go and like didn't know anybody or like have no resources whatsoever. But it was what I found like in those shadows or like in that darkness or that unknown, there just materialized these amazing opportunities. But nothing was guaranteed. Like it wasn't like you're gonna go here and this is gonna happen and it's gonna be great. It was always like I just feel like I need to do this, and that was always the next choice. It was always the right step. And looking back, I've never regretted listening to that voice. Like it's just always been so sure.
Yeah.
But it's the practice in listening to it and having the guts to to not just listen to it but make a move on it, because sometimes it's just like, oh my gosh, like this is going to change everything, are you sure?
Yep.
It's like, yes, I'm sure. And then you're like, damn it, okay, let's do it.
Yep. I can relate to that so much with decisions that I've made over the years, and it's just like, okay, gotta
Yeah,
follow it.
yeah. And I mean that's one thing that working with the people that I do, like, you know, they're like, life is so short, don't ignore that voice, because if you do, all those ignored whispers come back screaming at you in the end. And it's just like you recall all those missed opportunities or compromises that you know you should have done but didn't. And that's a pretty provoking thing I've heard from a lot of people. And I've also heard, in even more specifically, like, you know, some feel like the heaven and hell exist in those final moments when you realize all the opportunities that you took to give love and all the ones that you chose not to give love. And it's just
Mm.
like that life review that you hear, you know, where people are like,
Yeah.
my life flashed before my eyes. I've heard it a little more specifically to that contrast. It's just like when you could have done good, or you could have shown love, or given of yourself in a way, but then turned the other way or chose to deny that or deny someone else. Like those moments come back in the end.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah, and it makes sense, you know, it really does. I don't think people really forget what they do. You know, that's all just settling back there. And you know, you just want to be, I think, while alive, as conscious of that potential as possible. And then you end up making the right choices. Like my art teacher, who's 85 now, he's kind of a stoic philosopher type. And, you know, I've studied figurative art from him for 15 years. And he's like, Ian, it's not that complicated. Just do the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, listen to what you know is right and just do the right thing. Like, it's, I think it's a matter of like how to listen to that voice and like that judgment of yourself to know if it's the right thing. But coming from these people, like, it just seems like it's not that complicated, and we're the ones that make it so difficult, you
Yeah.
know, just with our
Hmm.
distractions or, you know, our like my foolishness, you know. It's like just the cultivation of wisdom, I think, is the key. And it just
Yeah.
gives you a good filter, you know. Just simply do the right thing every day.
Yeah. And that's going to be different for everybody, but we all have
Right.
to
No,
find
absolutely.
it. I'm really curious what Davey's thoughts are on all of this at the
I don't know what you expect from me.
moment.
I expect a slice of that pizza is what I expect.
Well, when it gets here, I'll save it for you, dog, for
There
sure.
you go.
Um, um, Yeah, I don't know. I think that as a songwriter, I'm inspired by the way you've developed this, not just this process, but the service aspect of your songwriting. I'm
Hmm.
very in awe of that. I don't have a lot to relate, like in terms of the positive outlook. I don't have one. So I'll spare everybody me bullshitting around that because I don't have one. But that being said, what you're doing is like there's not a lot of light in my dark world, but what you do is an example of that. So
Mm.
that's something that I feel I'd like to speak on. Besides that, I was curious though, like how do you factor this in? I mean, I don't know you that well, but I know you're pretty like you're a super deep dude. You're pretty spiritual dude. Like, how does this over time factor into your personal matrix aside from the fact that you are also really good at making yourself available to the other people in their time of need? Eventually, you step aside, and the vulnerability of being yourself is going to come back to you. How has the process been? Has there been struggle? Has it been just a consistent kind of accumulation of understanding, like you were saying earlier, or
You know, on the better days, it is. But it's like, you witness all these opportunities represented in these people, and they show you the choice you can make when faced with those personal crossroads.
mm,
And from what I've found, like I still face the same demons that I always have, just of all the seven deadly sins, I feel them more now than ever, actually. And and I think that's just because these people have been able to kind of be lanterns, and I think it's just a matter of like they're illuminating the shadows that have always been there in a way to where I can see the choice of like I can divulge this one part of me that I probably would have like indulged in the past, or I can act on this new wisdom that allows me to see this old part of me in a different way. And this is going to be tough because it's like dying to that old self and choosing to grow. And these people have, each one of them has been a symbol, and very much like a lantern, but it's made the journey harder in many ways. It's not just like this passive grooving with it anymore as it may have felt when I was younger and just more like, I'll do anything. It's more like there's a responsibility now to live in a way that honors what they were so open to me with, and like all these lessons that they learned, and they're just like, Ian, you're young, you can still live in this way. I'm dying, I can't live anymore, so
right?
it's up to you to like carry on with these gems that they've picked up, and through that, all the greater the challenge for me. Like I felt personally, just philosophically, like life has gotten clearer, but it's gotten more challenging.
Mm, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't really thought about that in that way. Thanks,
Yeah,
Davey.
not at all. It's something that when you just when you sit down and just kind of think about like project yourself into the situation that you have cultivated working with these people. I'm just like, it's not the courage to try things. I got the courage to stick with it the way you are. I don't, and that's why I wanted to kind of maybe explore that with you a little bit. So I do appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I have tougher questions though. I'm gonna go ahead and ask it. I don't give a fuck. Um, Normally, things of this nature were brought to these sorts of particular callings because it's a reflection of like dealing with loss ourselves. Was there a personal loss that brought you to hospice care beyond the exploration through nursing, or was it
Not so
really
much.
no?
Like this is something that I'm really curious about
Okay.
because I've lost people in my family that I've known, but I
Hmm.
haven't known them or loved them in the capacity of like my mother or father or my brother or my woman, you know, just like these people who are very close to me. Um, I've been I've been shown kind of like these windows into what it's going to look like, and it's almost like looking into a crystal ball sometimes, and it's scary, you know, because I don't know how I'm going to react. Like I talk about these lessons and I talk about all of these things, but I honestly know that I have no clue of how it's going to really feel when it hits the fan.
Yeah.
And that goes for my own death, you know, all those things I think about often. And I try to incorporate, okay, I've learned this, I've witnessed this, I've seen how it can go in all these different ways. What am I going to do today to prepare for that inevitability? And I do my best, but I really don't know. And so I'm really almost I think it's the artist in me, just very darkly curious of how that's going to affect everything else, and how that's going to affect this story that you mentioned, Jesse. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, you just kind of expect it.
That's again, that's that double courage right there. Because I'm like, I definitely see there's an ease in the courage of my nihilism
Uh-huh.
that there isn't in like making a foundation on something more positive than the abstract chaos that the universe likes to try to present. So again, very inspiring what you do, bro.
Well, thanks. I
It's
mean,
a,
there's part of me too that's just very much like I try to find this purpose or like construct some kind of meaning around everything.
mhm.
And then I also know that I could just get hit by a car tomorrow and that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
Or like that's it. And there's no like real like wait a minute, there was supposed to be more
Now,
here. Yeah.
now, God forbid that shit happens, but in a weird way, if it happened to any of us, is it just me, or would it be just a kind of a tiny bit hilarious? It'd be sad, but also hilarious. Is it just me?
The
Is that
irony
just
of
my reaction to the loss? I don't know.
no, I've
Um,
thought of that
I
too.
mean, I
I've
hope that
thought
happened to me instead of you guys. It'd be
well,
fucking funny. I'm sorry.
I've thought of that too, just like, you know, there's this heroic poetry to it all and just like and then Ian gets hit by a truck. It's like
Right? I'm
it's like,
sorry.
interesting. But it could happen. There's part of me that's just like and that's life as well. You know,
Yeah.
that's a
And that's where
very
I feel like we're standing on the same threshold at different portals, maybe because that's exactly how I see it. It's like that
I can see
that
that.
isness, that crucial element. I feel that too. Um, I just don't know how to explore it from a place of hope like you do. So what you're doing is something very interesting.
Cool.
Besides inspiring, it's like watching. It's like what like your drawings.
Hmm.
So your drawings are on a technical level they're breathtaking. But
Thank you.
then when you think about what you're going, how much you're preparing that subject that you express in the drawing, it takes it to just a different level. And you got to say to yourself, it's like, okay, what the challenge for me becomes not how do I access your personal point of view, but how knowing that I have that same sense of the life energy and my respect for it is there. How do I present it in that same like in my own way? And I'm like, that's gonna keep me curious for the next year and a half at least, maybe longer.
Maybe your
Um,
lifetime.
maybe my lifetime, baby, which is
That's not
6
a
months or
bad
less.
curiosity.
No.
And it is. It's a curiosity that keeps me in the game 100%. So it's the subject matter that you explore. I know a lot of people maybe, frankly, would be like at first being like hard to understand it. I'm sure you've encountered that a little in your as you've developed the craft of doing the legacy songs. Has that maybe been an aspect? And sometimes people have been like, "Whoa, I like the
Oh
idea,
yeah.
but this is just too intense. I can't really deal with it right now." Like, have you had that kind
Well,
of? Have you had to
yeah,
like
and
be part of that too?
I have, and it's been interesting to just like at first it'd be more like, you know, I present the idea and the intention, and some people are like, I've never heard of that before. That sounds like way too much. And, they're just like really kind of like repelled by it because of its intensity, maybe. But
Hmm.
then I've found that it's better to show than tell in most cases.
Mm.
And thankfully now I'm preceded by my liaisons and representatives most of the time to where they share the songs and they share the examples. And then people hear it and they're just like, perfect. Yes, I understand. I
Yep.
remember there was one gal, she was just kind of looking at a pretty rough road with her diagnosis, and she's like, I just want to end it all. I want to be done, and I don't see any purpose in living anymore, and so kill me, pretty much. And I'm like, okay. And respectfully, I tried to just come to her and be like, there's so much yet you can give, given the way you feel, and given this plateau that you're on right now. It's like you're right here, and that's the end. Like you're right here now. And I just wonder if you'd feel any comfort in exploring what service you could still provide mankind. And she's just like I could tell like the wheels were ticking just a little bit. And then I was able to share an example of somebody who was very much in similar shoes as her. And she heard her voice and she heard the song and she was just weeping and she was like, I understand, I get it, I need this. And she was able to give some really poignant love before she passed away because of that connection to her. She's like, I remember I had interviewed her and then I took that song back and I have the little lyric plaques that I got one right here if you want to see one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I make these and I let them hold it while they listen to their song so they can feel it. And I remember she was holding this plaque
Hmm.
and the song was playing on these exact earphones and she just sat there staring at this thing for like 5 minutes afterwards just in silence. And then she finally put it down. She took her little earphones off and she says, I understand. This is me and this is going to live. And it blows my mind to think that this almost didn't happen.
Right.
She looked back and she's like, my God, like I see how I almost stayed silent and this song would never have existed. She's like, this part of me would never be born and she would have just died. And that really got through to her. And and I remember her and every person that I talk to or like I'm asked to meet with. And it's just like in that darkness, there's such potential for this incredible light because it's like they feel like they're in the deepest shadow and they're blind in the way they feel. But then like this thing happens to where they see like in that shadow, they're actually seeing what we all wish we could see. And they actually have the clearest sight of anybody in so
Right.
many cases. And it's just this profound irony that just is like it's fascinating. It's so so fascinating.
Yeah.
And there's so much there. I mean, it's just it looks different for everybody and I'm just excited like with each person that does this, it's like they're becoming ambassadors of that same hope for everybody else who's going to be facing that same kind of situation for them. It's like each song becomes an example to show a potential within somebody else and like another potential for someone else to relate and maybe feel like they're not completely alone in this world or like on this road that they're on, but they can remember that there's been many 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 people in the past that have walked the same road and many have chosen still to give even in those last moments. And I had one patient who he said like I'm still alive until I'm dead, and he said like every moment till his end was precious and that the true purpose of life was to give to another, and how even in his death he saw that as his supreme opportunity to give some of the best that he could ever give. I've had several patients like that had that
Mm.
same responsibility and that same sensibility, and it's just so profound to witness. I can't even imagine. I hope that I can find them when I'm there, and just like if I'm in despair, or if I'm just like, hopeless, I can remember these people, or at least play their songs and try to remember, at least I'll have those little nuggets for me to revisit them. But it's just so absolutely noble that I haven't seen anything quite so powerful.
Yeah.
They're just like they're staring death in the face, but they're still looking around at the ones that they love, and they're just like, I can still like love you. I can still tell you what I'm learning from all this, and like the preciousness of it all, and just those eyes that see life as it's about to end. I mean, that's kind of this another incredibly fascinating penetration that I've just that artist part of me is just how do we find that? It's like how do we see life with those eyes?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the artist tries to. We try to see it
We're
with that
driven
kind of
to.
clarity.
We're driven to it, I think.
I think
Mhm.
so. I think it's something we all crave. And I just remember I had this dream like a long time ago where in the dream I was going to die. Like I knew it. To my bones, I knew that it was only a matter of days. And I just looked around and I saw the ordinary beauty that was there always. And I was just so torn that I couldn't see it in that clarity until I had to leave it behind. And I'll take that dream with me forever. Because I'm like, I wish I saw the world like this all the time. Like, I wonder if, I wonder if even like steps towards that is possible. And really that theme is something that I've tried to learn from with these people is like, that's how they see the world. And
Right.
that's how I think we all wish we could. And I don't know. There's so much to it, and it's just rare, beautiful stuff. And it's just like, how do you, how do you provide that healing or like that meaning essentially that wouldn't be there before, just as a witness.
Yeah.
That's super empathetic and very lovely.
Yeah. It absolutely is. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it is. And it's, the last time we were hanging out in person, I was inspired by this stuff that we were talking about because it does, I think talking about healing and finding purpose and all these different themes we're exploring, you're already accumulating so much of that already, and being able to help people and doing what you do, and I feel like that's the kind of thing that's just going to really just be incredibly solid as time goes on, because this is only like you said 5 years of this time period, which is like a blink of an eye essentially in the grand scheme
Right.
of things. And even if you apply that to the craft of like songwriting and playing your instrument or whatever your instrument is, 5 years is not a lot of time, especially looking at when you're 10, 15, 20 years into doing something. It's you look at those first 5 years and you go, oh wow, like a whole bunch of different things could come up. And
Right.
the same with this. I and something you said just a second ago really hits the nail on the head for me, is that just because you have the clarity and the focus doesn't mean it's not going to be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Because just in my own life with losing people, that whole like I just felt this like ambition of I have to do everything, I need to do all the things that I've never done yet. And in doing that, I don't know, having that routine and the focus to pursue what you're pursuing is different, because I feel like too there's a lot of people that must be in this situation that want to do as much as they can, but it's more out of a fear of not doing enough while they were, like you're running late somewhere and you step on the gas to
Mm-hmm.
get to where you're going. And so for you,
Hmm.
it's this must be a good perspective to like, pace all of this stuff out over the course of a lifetime, as opposed to trying to, I guess fit it all into a given time frame.
Yeah, uh, there's a nice little kind of balance I've tried to respect. It's just like I'm doing what I'm doing now, comfortable and excited to do it as if I was going to live for a long time. Like I'm so excited to know like how this whole process is going to mature by the time I'm like 50 or 60
Right.
or 70 or 80 and still hacking out these songs, like but with this mastery that just comes with time and practice, and
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that I live that long, but at the same time I'm like I've come to a place as well that I feel if I was to die soon, I wouldn't be scrambling. Like I think I'm doing pretty much everything every day that I'm happy to be doing, and I'm sure that it would be surprising in its own ways to face an early end, but I feel like if I imagine it, and I imagine it often, I try to practice. It's like a form of meditation for me. Um, there's not a lot left unsaid or undone. Like I feel like I'm doing what I need to be doing, and I feel so happy to be doing it. And I just hope that I have more time to do it. That's kind of my general philosophy is like live as though you don't have all the time in the world, and then live also as if you're going to live for quite a while.
Right. Yeah, it's an inspiring place to come from, and a perspective that I aspire to have one day, and that's something that I felt like I've been working on, and just trying to achieve, and then conversations like this kind of help put the whole thing into perspective, and going through all of this too, having literally all the time in the world to think about things, with not, it's I wrote in a recent article I did, talking about that this 9 months has been like a cocoon of,
Hmm.
basically, and then why would I want to leave the cocoon before I get my wings,
Hmm.
basically, because it took everything being, brought to a close for me to actually go like, hey, you were kind of not really in the moment. You
Hmm.
weren't savoring the food. You're just kind of shoveling it down your throat and like
Hmm.
going back to the buffet for seconds, but you're not like tasting any of this. You just took a bite, and that's the equivalent of like being in the moment, like, and really taking in the here and now of what's actually happening, and not just, yeah, I'm doing a thing and I'm, talking to my friend and I'm going to go, go play a gig and I'm going to go do this. And it's like, yeah, but were you enjoying those things, or were you doing them, because you had like 80 million things on your calendar that you had to do and felt like, I'm a creative person. I have to work. I have to, I have to constantly be doing these things. And yeah, you can, but I think what you're talking about is that perspective and that clarity to really understand what you have, and like being in the moment with those things and not losing sight of that. And it's just super inspiring, man. I'm working on that every day, and it's
Me too. It's a good thing to work on. It's
yeah,
like that constant potential that like tempts you to even in itself be distracted of that ideal that distracts you from the actual doing of it. It's like
Well,
I
that
have to
happens all the
focus
time.
on being,
yep,
you know, I have to focus on being in the moment, but you're always thinking about being in the moment and you're not really in the moment. It's
yeah,
that kind of thing.
like trying to meditate. Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Right. Right.
If you just, if like
It's the
I need to obtain enlightenment, and it's like, yeah, you're
right. I
not
need to
gonna,
quiet my mind. Quiet my mind.
yeah, and that's actually
Yeah.
like actually been with getting into that, I find out it's the exact opposite of that. It's like letting all of those emotions come out and observing them. It's not like being mindless and just trying to push all that stuff out. It's like,
Right.
no, that's not that's not it. You actually have to face your problems,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Interesting.
yeah, it's all of this stuff is about just trying to get to a place where we feel like we're more in the moment and just really appreciative of like the gift of what life is, or finding gifts and moments in that when it appears like there aren't any really.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, it's this is even just talking about this, I see how when you're confronted with all of these different stories from people, it's like it's really like infinite in the sort of areas you could discuss on this and where it's gonna take your mind and your perspective on things. It seems like there's seemingly no end to that.
I know, and they just keep coming. I mean, it's really amazing. Just I feel like there's this rich Rolodex of stories and lessons that are just growing over the years, and it's so nice to have each one of them as like a symbol,
Yeah,
and to talk about them, and for it, to be really lovely content for discussion. It's just like human wisdom
yep,
and life learned, and through the lens of mortality. I mean, it's so powerful,
yeah,
and it just makes for such relatable stuff. It's like the human condition, and they're just simple normal people that spill their guts. It's raw beautiful stuff.
yeah. That's the genesis of why I've always wanted to do something like this with just talking to people. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get conversations and perspectives on life that I always sought for in different interviews and shows and stuff. Whether it's something really funny, really insightful, just a crazy story that changes your perspective. And yeah, it's about just studying this whole, like you said, human condition and like these different little moments that you can't quantify or put your finger on, but as soon as you hear about them and they enter your mind, you go, yeah, that's it. Like whatever that yeah moment is, that like
Right.
that like explosive evaporating thing you can't get your fingers on, that it's like, yeah, that's it. Like that's
Right.
yeah, it's like, yeah, let's put that into words. Let's talk about that. Let's try to understand that a little bit
I
better.
love it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up. But before you go, I did want to ask you, because we didn't get to talk about the travel much, and not to, because that could be a whole other podcast on its own with all of your stories and adventures and things. For just people who might be getting into traveling or new to it, or musicians on tour or songwriters that want to travel or do that, can you kind of just give some advice on traveling abroad, traveling around America, anything in that area?
Yeah, I tell him now's not the time.
Well, no, okay. I, I will preface this. When it is safe
When
to
it is the
travel,
time.
what would
Zing!
I think that
So
is the
funny.
best advice you could give. Absolutely. But
Oh.
Oh man.
but yes,
Well, I know I'm hungry for it for sure.
yeah, me too.
Man, where to begin? I mean, yeah, this totally is another episode. I mean, I could just go on and on. Um, for someone that wants to and never has, or one that's just looking to explore kind of the nomadic.
Let's do someone who wants to and never has. They're the ones who need the most help and the most
Yeah.
inspiration, and that's why you're here.
Right. Okay. There we
Yeah,
go.
we need to maximize this.
Thank
Well,
you.
I think back to a young me. When I first started traveling, it all was just because I wanted to learn. And I think the why behind travel is pretty powerful. Um, I think if I was just going to travel to have a good time and to go party and, um, just do that whole thing, I wouldn't have gotten nearly as much out of my adventures as I have. And I think it begins with trying to understand, all right, why do I want to travel? Why do I want to go? Like, why do I want something new? Or like, what am I hungry for? What am I looking for? And in the beginning, I tried to really ask myself that, and I really wanted to find friends of like mind, and I wanted to find them in the most unexpected places, and I wanted to find them, like, find a way to find people anywhere, I guess, is kind of was one of my curiosities. And in the beginning, I would go somewhere and I wouldn't know anybody. I would just hop on a plane and book this trip to Hawaii, or like book a trip to England, or book it to Spain or something. And most of those early adventures, like, I had no clue what I was going to do or where I was going to go. Like, I had a place to stay, I wasn't just going
Mhm.
to go sleep on a bench,
Right.
but I didn't have any plans, because I just felt like that openness was so key, and like that hunger to connect, and to give of myself in a way to where it's like, if you're going to travel somewhere and you're expecting to get something solely, then it's not going to be as rich an experience as maybe you would have hoped for, because I think the whole traveling perspective brings to light, the more you give, the more you get. And when you're in a new place and you're in a new country with new people and like new opportunities everywhere, if you're giving of yourself in whatever way that looks like, with me, it was with music, it was of conversations, it was just like, just connection. I really wanted to know somebody when I met them. And it just made for so many wonderful friendships, and just, friends that have lasted through all these years, and friends that I've only been able to see once or twice a year, but I see them every year, and it's just like this magic all over again.
Yeah.
And that came from wanting to give, and really wanting to connect, instead of like, let's see what good a time I can have, like, let's get crazy. It's like that could potentially detract from a new traveler's experience, in the fact that, you're just wanting to get something for
Right.
yourself. But
You'll get more of that anyway if you're actually just giving, and you'll run across the kind of people where you will have a way better time.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's deeper that way,
Yeah.
it's more, I don't know, there's more longevity there. Like, for me, that's what kept me coming back to it. Like, every
Yep.
time I'd have an experience to where I'd go and I wouldn't know anybody, and like I'd end up with that positive, rich experience, I'd be like, can't wait to go again, and it just kept me going. Like, I just kept, like, that exponential, you meet this person who knows these five people, and they introduce you to all those guys, and like those five people know five more, and then you just end up with this family all across the world. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think, yeah, it's just have a heart of openness, and like just desire to know people, and experience and celebrate their differences. And like, if you go to a country, maybe like one that you find culturally interesting, that hunger to know why they are the way they are, and like a, a, just like a, just a hungry curiosity. I mean, people want to share who they are. Like, when I'd go to Greece and I'd stay with these locals in Santorini, and like we're all just hanging around and drinking ouzo and playing mandola, and I'm just like, tell me more of like your guys' stories, and like,
Yeah.
and I want to know why you live the way that you do. I'm sure there's just so much reason and goodness to it. And they're just like, yeah, man, like,
Yeah.
this is the only way to fly. Have some more ouzo. And it
Right.
was just,
Right. Right. Right.
I think people want to share who they are. Like, they want to share their story.
Yeah.
And when you find this person that's just new in town and new in your life, and this new traveler maybe that we're speaking to now, it's like you can feel that hunger in somebody, and you can
Yeah.
feel that curiosity, and you want to give to that, because it's going to expand that person.
Yep.
So it's like, I think the best thing maybe you can give is just that open mind or open heart, because people want to love, they want to welcome you into their world.
Yep.
And as a traveler, you can do that. It's symbolic of just daily living, but it's so magnified in its novelty with traveling that I just, I miss it. Even thinking about it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like,
Me too.
let's get on a plane, honey. Let's go.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, no, I know. As soon as it's safe to book shows and hop in a van that doesn't smell great, that is the first thing that
Perfect.
I'm going to be doing. And doing that. That's my favorite part about playing shows is because it's a catalyst for that sort of conversation, and people want to share things with you. I find and
Hmm.
show like because you're from out of town and you're only going to be there for a day or two, and it's like, oh, you have to go to this place. Oh,
The
let
brevity of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
or if you come back there again and you keep in touch with those same people, they bring other people you didn't meet the first time, and then you get to have those conversations, and it's just that whole thing is just really magic, because
It
you
really
don't.
is.
It's not the same as if you move to a new place and you get to live there, but you're getting snapshots you wouldn't be able to get otherwise that aren't like
Hmm.
touristy things. It's this is how real people live in whatever town you're in, and this is their group of friends, and this is how they get along and get by, and they cook for you. Hey, stay at my place. Hey, I'll make
Some apple
everybody dinner.
pie. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah, and you're
Yeah.
like, yes,
Oh
absolutely,
man.
let's do this. You know, so yeah, all right,
I know.
Ian.
I get it. I miss that too. It's magic.
Yeah, yeah, it's I miss it too, but that's what this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed. We'll be back to doing that and getting back to things, and
And
that's my
yeah,
hope.
just me too. And just a little word of encouragement that I've kind of tried to see this year in relation to going back out again, like your cocoon analogy. It's like we're experiencing so much now that allows us to relate to everybody else in some capacity. Like so
Oh
many
yeah,
people are facing the same battles, and if we can understand those things and like really feel them now and like deal with them, then we'll have all these stories to share and to relate to out all over the world when we go back out there. It's just like I think people will be so prime to connect again and
absolutely.
to just lean on each other and just be like, oh my gosh, like you too? Yeah, geez, in a way that's never been done before. I think the world's been touched in a certain way that when people are out looking for each other again, they'll find each other.
Oh yeah, and I
I'd
and I
like
don't.
to think so.
Yeah,
I hope so. I
yeah.
do.
I hope so too. And I don't want to be the same going back into this. I want to have that. I want to be more in touch with that and be better moving forward about recognizing those moments and not
Right.
taking a hug for granted. All right, see you later. It's like no, like embrace like and really appreciate those moments and really appreciate what it means to be able to be with people in person. And
Hmm.
not taking that stuff for granted like you might have before.
I completely agree. I think seeing the preciousness of life, there's just so many moments that I think will be more precious at the other end
Yep.
that are already. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Ian, you're a beautiful soul, beautiful spirit, and we thank you so much for being on this podcast. And as always, it's been enlightening and inspiring conversation, man. It's an honor to know you and call you a friend. I've said that before, but I will say it again.
No.
I'm glad that you're somebody that I can call up and talk about the meaning of life with. So I appreciate you.
Anytime. Thank you guys. It was always a pleasure to share these things.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, we got to do it again sometime. Anytime you want to come on, we'll be happy to have you.
Great. Yeah, I'm open. I'd love to.
Sweet. Take it
Hells yeah.
easy.
You too, guys. Thanks.
Right on, brother.
Fading in the cool music written by Maximum Max Taylor. Davey has turned into a fish, and I've turned into an NPR DJ, as I tend to do sometimes. Oh man, you got the gills going and everything. That's an intense. You've got sort of an Ernest Goes to Camp meets a aquatic life going on.
You know what's fun about this particular situation? I realized that you get closer to my head, and then I could do a lot more of the rubber things. Like, unfortunately, with my fundamentalist beard, it's concealing it. But once you get this close, you can kind of see. Like, I'm a very much a visual person, so it's weird that I'm doing a podcast because I'm always making a face when I should be like wording.
Yeah, your Jumanji Tom Hanks castaway beard, as I like to refer to.
I like that. It's
Yeah. Every time I see,
it is a little of both of those.
Yeah.
I like that.
Every time I see your beard, I predominantly think of that meme of Robin Williams from Jumanji when he goes, "What year is it?" That's usually my first thought.
I thought you were gonna say every time I see your beard, you take a piece of me with you.
I mean, I already have.
Every time you see my beard, I know you should feel this.
You really?
I take a piece of you with me. That's a parody.
Oh man, I was expecting a spontaneous. I was expecting a spontaneous trumpet solo and not you busting into your singing voice.
Nah, I gotta figure out what I did to it first.
Okay, fair enough.
It's all farty right now, like a whoopee cushion.
Hey, you know.
And that's not me. I've been putting in work. I got some horniness.
You got some. I see what
I
you
got
did
some
there.
horniness, and I perform sax with myself pretty often.
It's a healthy thing.
Alto.
It's a
alto sax.
That's a healthy thing to do. As
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple hours a day, but that's just because it's just due diligence.
Yeah, you're asexual then.
I am definitely like, I thought I was poly, but turns out I'm A.
Yeah. Hey, it's
hey, sax.
no
right?
no judgment in this council meeting. So
none whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
What, you think because we got a gavel and shit, we're gonna be judging people? We're never gonna be judging people.
That's just
to that. Puerto Rican says birds to that.
Yeah, that's just to let people know the party has started. So
party started. You're here now.
So anyway, speaking of people that are here now, you're here now.
We're here for now.
And you're following us in this period of where we've transitioned into Zooming and doing all of the cool virtual stuff that we're doing for the time being while, COVID is settling down and things and whatnot. So, things are cool to meet in the studio, I should say. So we appreciate you going along for the ride with us, and we also appreciate your patronage here at these council meetings. They are much appreciated, and we're happy to have you along.
Well, that's true.
It is true. And what else is true, Mr. Davey, Mr. Sipes? If you would like to check out any of Ian's legacy songs, or if you would like to check out any of his works, you can visit them online at his website, ianmccartor.com. Check out the description below, and you'll find all that stuff. And you'll find links to all of his social media as well. So, to hear his songs and kind of get to see more of what he's doing and get a better idea of that. So please check that out if y'all get the chance.
Do what Jesse said.
Not always, but in this instance, yes.
Every time he makes a suggestion, follow it to the letter. Then we can hold him legally responsible later. It's a good plan.
Your Honor, clearly.
Follow me, counsel.
Your Honor, clearly, in episode 13, Exhibit A, he stated in the outro.
Oh, he's playing the prosecution against himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll be your defense. I'm just a simple chicken from a backwoods asteroid, but I know what is that, Futurama or whatever. That chicken lawyer was the best thing ever.
It was the best thing ever. I'll let you be my chicken lawyer anytime, Davey.
Well, thank you, sir. Yield to the prosecution at this time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. We shall see you next week.
Peace.
Sonic City Council was created by Jesse Davidson and Davey Sipes and engineered by Max Taylor at Desert Sound Studio in Palmdale, California. Thank you to Disaster Cabinet for the outro music. Intro music written by Max Taylor. Sonic City Council is produced in association with Amps Music Academy and the Showcase Venue. For more information, visit theshowcasevenue.com.